What's up, guys? It's been a minute since I did one of these videos. I'm trying to juggle a few too many hobbies, and try to be a dad and work and all that stuff. So it's been a minute since I've done a video. Hope to get back on the train. This is my first attempt in a while. So you know, first of all, I'm gonna start out with big congrats to David on a championship. Um, and it was a long time coming. Long time coming. I hope to have him on the show sometime very soon, and we can discuss his team, his run, kind of his thought process, and how it feels to be a champ. I know after four tries in the championship, it must feel sweet to finally get one. That was awesome. He had a great year, and I look forward to talking about all his crazy decisions. That just at the time I was like, oh man, I can't believe we traded for Jamal Williams or Evan Ingram or whatever. But these guys ended up popping and winning him a championship. So great decision making on David's part, and he absolutely deserved his run. It was a great run to watch. So we'll have you on soon, David. Um, Today I was thinking we just do kind of a solo run here with me. We'll have more videos with others, but I wanted to go over a few things to for y'all to be thinking about during the off season, and what you can be doing. So I'll go through some dates that are important, that I think you all should keep in mind, while you're thinking about things, and hopefully that'll help guide some of your decision making. Obviously, we can make trades right now. The trades are open. None have happened, but I definitely have talked trades with a lot of people, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that as the year progresses. So so what dates do you actually have to care about though, from now until the start of the season? Um, and I think you know there's a couple things that pop to my mind. There's kind of draft related pieces, and then there's also free agency. So I'll start out by talking about the draft. Um, so for those of you who don't know, the NFL draft starts on April 27th. It lasts for 3 days. Typically, the days we're interested in is day one and maybe day two for some running backs, some wide receivers, later picks. Day three, you're typically not getting a guy that you're interested in, but hey, you could get the next Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. Who knows? Before the draft, though, there's even some dates to keep in mind, which is the NFL Combine, which starts on February 28th and runs through March 6th. So the Combine will really show the measurables, the physicality of these guys. How fast are they? How high can they jump? Things like that. And if there are guys who are going to stand out, this will be their time. And if there are guys who, their draft capital, what we talk about a lot, depends on kind of the combine. This will be a really important date. For example, let's talk about a guy like Tank Bigsby. Didn't have necessarily the biggest year in college football, but the combine, if he comes and shows out there and is elite, and shows elite measurables, then what that can do for his draft capital could be huge. When I say draft capital, I mean like when he is drafted, right? Is it the first round, second round? Probably for him, second round, or yeah, second round pick. If I had to guess right now, maybe third round. But yeah, that's what people mean when they talk about draft capital. Draft capital is super important. You can think about the NFL draft. If you're not a scout yourself, which I don't think any of you are, based on your fantasy football moves, although David could maybe have the honors this past year of being an NFL scout. My goodness. But none of you guys are, so those those measurables, those are super important, and they'll help you. They help guide the actual draft, and the actual draft itself will help us make decisions. So if a guy is drafted early in the first round, you know that that team is really interested in that player and really wants to make them a big part of their team. There's a lot of early picks that are boring. You're going to see, offensive line, defensive line, cornerbacks. Those are all really important positions, and teams really value those players. But if there's an offensive like skill position player drafted highly, you should really have that on your radar because that means that they're an important piece. So um, a lot of people look at the NFL draft and kind of order their rookies pretty closely to the NFL draft. You're gonna have some misses like your Jalen Ragers, Henry Ruggs, Kevin Whites. You know Sometimes that's due to injury and not necessarily talent, but or Henry Ruggs' case, murdering someone. Yeah, that can derail your NFL career. But draft capital is super important for us. It's going to really change the way the kind of mock drafts and how we're ordering things. So right now, we've kind of got an idea of where guys are going to fall, and Lewis has put out some really good content on that. So those will change drastically when we see like, oh man, Bijan actually went to a team we're excited about. Oh wait, he's still going to be the number one pick. Not a great example, but let's say a guy like Sean Tucker gets drafted in some place exciting like Miami. He got drafted, pretty much Miami's the exciting spot, right? That comes into a lot of people's heads. If Miami drafts a running back, that feels like fantasy gold because you've got guys like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson who are just killing it in this offense. Surely a younger and more athletic player could come in and do some damage. But those guys really know that Shanahan system. There's things to think about there. But anyway, so NFL drafts on the 27th, we should definitely have a watch party on day one at least. I think that'd be super fun. I'll try to take the day off the next day, even though it's a really busy season for me at work. Okay, so what else should you care about? And this might be a little bit more of our focus later on in this episode. It's the free agency piece. And so free agency is pretty complicated, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys every detail of all the tags and how all those tags work. I'm not going to tell you, every single date on those tags, but I think the good thing to know is that March 15th is the beginning of the new league year, they call it. So that's when free agency begins. That's when guys can be offered contracts from other teams and sign those long-term contracts. So that week of the 15th there, you're going to see a lot of movement, a lot of player movement in the first couple days, and then maybe a week later, there'll still be a little bit of movement based on the early signings. And this free agency is going to be bananas. There's a lot of running backs. You think about like Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, even got guys like Tony Pollard, which is kind of we'll talk about in a little bit. That they're out there. This is a bananas free agent class in terms of a running back perspective. So things are going to change a lot for teams, and we're going to value guys a lot differently based on their situations. But if they're talented, the talent should shine through. I will say franchise tags can start a little earlier. They have to be designated on March 7th, but we'll see what happens there. Those are typically the tags themselves aren't used a whole lot on fantasy relevant players. The franchise tag occasionally is, and that's something to talk about. But anyway, so what does that mean? March 15th, that's that period of free agency is actually before the draft. So we're actually going to know before the draft where a lot of these guys end up signing, where Josh Jacobs goes, where Saquon goes. Um, and it might not be a lot of movement. If the team likes them, they're probably going to try and re-sign their guys and sell them on a new year, new system, whatever, to get them to stay. But so we should know by when the draft pops around, who's signed contracts, and staying long term. So what landing spots are available really for these running backs? If these guys, these stronger running back free agents sign a long term contract, they're less. That team is less likely to pick, a Sean Tucker or Zach Evans or whoever to come in and kind of learn behind them. Especially if they've got a nice cheap option that they like already on the team. So, I mean, these are things we'll have to consider and think about as they go along. But you should just know those dates, kind of March 15th for free agency, combine, even earlier than that. So before that, 28th of February, that's when that starts, and the NFL draft itself on the 27th. So get excited. Those are all really big, and there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of change, a lot of situations are going to change. Like nothing is a given, is all I'm trying to say about your team. And I think with that in mind, I want to take a kind of quick look at David's team. I want to take a quick. I looked at different teams, and I thought, what would be an interesting team to look at right now, and I think for me, David's an interesting team to kind of dig into, and the reason is number one, he just won, right? Like David just won a championship. Uh, he just dominated, and if I had just won a championship, I would want to kind of keep the band together. And what I wanted to look at was, well, how realistic is it for him to just kind of not do anything over the summer? David doesn't have any picks to speak of. Let me look at it. What we've got right here, but it looks like his next even second round pick isn't until 2025. Now, once the draft is over with, David is going to get a whole new set of 2026 picks. Like once we finish our draft, whenever we do that, which could be anytime after April 29th, we could do it May, June, July. Let's hopefully do it earlier and get everybody together. Hopefully we don't draft in a treehouse on the side of a cliff. But if we do, we do. Someone dies, they die. Have to replace them. But David doesn't have any picks to really replace players with. In the 2023 draft, he's got a third round pick for Zach. That's like, what is that? The 36th pick off the board. So he's picking number 36 rookie. Good luck if you find somebody there, David. But I look at David's team, and I think free agency could have a big impact on him. His team is really strong in certain areas, like quarterback, for example. He has two really strong quarterbacks with Patrick Mahomes and Kirk Cousins going into the season. Honestly, someone might want to trade for Cousins. Just looking at this, that's such a luxury. But hey, he's winning because of decisions like that. He's got Christian McCaffrey, who's signed until 2026 on like a $12 million a year contract. Christian McCaffrey is going nowhere. He is amazing, and he's a set it and forget it stud RB1 next year. He's got Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown, both those guys under contract for several more years and are studs. Someone could argue maybe like Amon-Ra St. Brown, maybe he gets more competition from Jameson Williams this upcoming year. But the way I look at that, having someone opposite you that's good, better than like a DJ Chark or what have we got, Josh Reynolds or whoever else that's lining up opposite on the other side of Amon-Ra, like it's actually a good thing. I look at it like a Devontae Smith, AJ Brown situation, or T Higgins, Jamar Chase. Like it's not a bad thing to have some competition for targets with another good player because it's going to open up the field for you. Jameson Williams is going to stretch the field, and Allen Rob's going to eat. I would love to trade for him, but he is going to be expensive. Uh, and then Tyler Lockett is a flex, but he's locked in for a few more years on his contract. I really doubt the Seahawks take a wide receiver in the draft. I guess they could, and that's something to maybe consider. Maybe they want to groom somebody and take some wide receiver in the draft. But my guess is they go defense. That's always my go-to. I think in a draft when I see a team that can't stop other teams too well. I really do think the Seahawks gave up a lot of points this year. They're a really young defense, although they played better than they should have. They don't have a lot of high draft capital guys on the defensive side, so I just really do feel like they're going to go defense early. I've said that a few times, and maybe that's just my go-to when I think about the draft. But it's truly what I think there. But so the kind of meat of this analysis here hits when we start thinking about the RB2s and the other running backs on David's team. So David did a great job this year in grabbing a couple guys in Jamal Williams and Tony Pollard. Drafted Tony Pollard, picked up Jamal Williams in a trade with Penny, which we all gave him a hard time for. I don't say all, but I certainly did in my head, thinking you giving up a first for a 28-year-old running back who never really killed it or anything. But this guy has just had a great year. He's a huge, Jamal's a big anime nerd. He cracks me up. And Pollard just popped. Finally, Pollard had an interesting year too because we've been watching the Cowboys line for years, and Zeke has just lost speed, but he can still block really well. And so we keep thinking, well, Tony Pollard can't do that. Tony Pollard can't do what Zeke does. And Pollard got the bulk of the carries this year. He's obviously a great pass catcher. He showed out, and so what do these guys have in common, and why do I even care about talking about them? Well, they're both Pollard and Jamal Williams are both They are unrestricted free agents. So when March 15th hits, they can sign with any team they want for any sort of contract. Now, Pollard had a steal of a contract. He had $3 million over 4 years. He's completely underpaid. So he's looking for a big deal. His first real big deal. But he's a little on the older side for a running back still. And so is Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is even older. He's 28, and he just finished his $3.75 million contract. So these guys could go to any team. And I'd like to think that their situations right now are amazing, right? They're perfect for them. I don't think Jamal Williams is some super special talent, but they let him, hit the goal line every single time, and he was able to push through and get those 2 yards that DeAndre Swift obviously showed he couldn't do, play through contact and things like that. So these guys value, the Lions value Jamal Williams. He's kind of the heart of the team. Are they going to re-sign him? I would think so. I think that would be the cheapest option. Re-sign him to another short-term deal. He kind of finishes his career out in Detroit. Something like that would make a lot of sense, but it's entirely possible that someone sees his talent, his leadership, and offers him a bigger contract, and the Lions don't consider matching. Pollard is a little bit of a different situation. I feel like his contract offer is just going to be too much for the Cowboys cap situation. And they're just not going to be able to afford him. My guess is he goes to another team, and the Cowboys decide to draft another running back to replace him. But we'll see what happens. Maybe they sign Pollard, cut Zeke, and draft somebody else. I'm just not sure that Zeke goes away in Cowboy land and in Jerry land. So we'll see what happens with these two guys, but that could drastically change David's team if the situations aren't as good. Pollard put up an amazing season. What if he becomes the 1B on some team where he doesn't get the focus that he did this year? Then he isn't that amazing flex or RB2 play that he used to be. Now he has a ton of talent, and you think talent would win out. If I had to bet on either of these guys reproducing their previous season, I would definitely pick Pollard. Jamal Williams leading the league in touchdowns. Is that going to happen again? I wouldn't bet on it personally, but especially if he goes to another team, I could see him not getting a ton of run, and he's not that amazing boon to this team that he was this year. Now that's being very pessimistic. They could both re-sign. They could both be great players for David's team. There's one more player to discuss on David's team. It's Kareem Hunt. His situation, he had a rough year. Week 1 was amazing, and then everything else was pretty bad. That offense was tough to watch this year. Chubb did his thing, but for the most part, that it didn't look great, and Kareem Hunt didn't have his usual awesome season. He is also 28. I think I need to actually look that up. But he's on the older side for sure. Let's look up David's team. Kareem Hunt's. He's 27. But he's going to be a free agent. He had a much bigger contract, like a 2-year, $12 million contract compared to Pollard and Williams. Certainly didn't produce on that contract. So we'll see what happens with him. It could be interesting. Everybody's always wanted Kareem Hunt to get back to that starter status. So something could happen. As for the other guys, like I said, CMC is signed through 2026. James Conner signed through 2025. And Michael Carter's rookie deal expires in 2025. Of those guys, James Conner, obviously CMC is a locked and loaded RB1. And James Conner, you could probably start him in a pinch, especially if Arizona gets a better head coach and all that good stuff. But it's a very murky situation in Arizona right now. Connor's also 27. So got a lot of older running backs on this roster. And free agency and the draft, which I haven't even really mentioned, play a big part in what happens with these teams. So we're going to have free agency. Guys like Pollard, Williams, and Hunt will sign contracts starting on the 15th. And then we'll have the draft, and guys like Bijan are going to get drafted and to be the guy in certain spots. So maybe on the 15th, Kareem Hunt signs a deal with Atlanta, something like that, and you think, oh, he's going to be the guy in Atlanta, and then they go and get a guy like Bijan to start. So things could change by the end of April. So we'll have to kind of revisit these situations. Anything could happen. But that's pretty much the analysis here. So that's really 2 starters that I'm concerned about for David's team. The rest, not too concerned about. I think his tight end situation, he's got some good options. Tight end is a wasteland, so Evan Ingram, Taysom Hill. Those are guys that are just fine to start in this awful world. His wide receiver room outside of Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra is rough in terms of the bench. You've got Lockett for another couple years, but nothing in terms of free agency or the draft are really going to impact these guys. So that's really his 3 guys that he can count on next year. They're all going to get runtime, and it's just a matter of injuries maybe impacting. There's not a lot of depth on the wide receiver room. So, but I want to get into that kind of discussion more with David on the show. And that whole discussion, like the team building side of things, we can do that when David's around. But I want to give you guys, let's just kind of take a step back here for everybody else. This wasn't just an exercise for David. What you can do is you can look up your teams or your players' contracts and see, are they an unrestricted free agent? What, you should probably know that by now just by the sleeper updates that maybe you've looked at. But if not, just go through it and take a look. Are they going to be a free agent this upcoming season? How should that impact your team building? Is your depth looking rough? Okay, well maybe you trade for some later picks to try and build up your depth. Um, is an older stud about to be a free agent? That might be a good time to sell him before all the uncertainty that could happen in a new situation. Things like that are things you should think about. And just generally, I think the best advice that I give but can't listen to myself is be patient. I know Lewis said this too. Like his goal is to be patient over the next year. Um, Me too. I want to be patient here, and trades are fun, but some of these dates are super important. We're gonna find out, if this 2023 class is really all it's cracked up to be. Are we gonna see a ton of guys go on the first and second day of the draft that are super interesting, great situations that we're interested in buying into, and that kind of stuff. So David doesn't have any picks, and there's a lot of people like David who don't have a big, you know, a lot of decision to make on the draft. They're not thinking about, okay, I've got to think about the first round, second round here. Most people who made the playoffs didn't have any picks in the first round, so um, there is an important aspect that I want to tell you guys about, and that's making your own tier list. And it's like, well, why would I care about the NFL draft if I don't have any draft picks? Well, you can still trade into the draft. You can trade your players for picks to get into the draft if you're getting rookie fever, and you want some of these rookies. If you want to try and get your team younger, right? And you should do that. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to make a tier list of these rookies. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just say, okay, I like these guys about the same. So to me, what a lot of people in the dynasty community say, like this year, there's a couple guys maybe in their own tiers. In tier 1, tier 2, you got Bijan and Gibbs. There's definitely a gap there between those two guys, and maybe a gap to the next group of guys. And it's really interesting to think about to yourself, like, oh, is pick 1.03 just as valuable to me as 1.06? Are there 4 guys right there that I value the same? Could I trade back in the draft and get a better player? Or maybe, okay, there's about to be a huge tier break here. I like these 4 guys. I really want to get one of these 4 guys. Maybe I should trade up to get this pick 1.06 because the rest of these guys afterwards aren't that great. To me, to me personally, that's something you should think about. It's going to help you a lot. Even if you don't have any picks, you could say like, oh, okay, well, maybe this team wants to contend. I can give them an older stud running back and buy into the draft here and get somebody that I like. So you aren't just like, you can just approach it. If you don't have any picks, you could just say, I don't care about this class. I don't need to know anything about it. But personally, I would recommend kind of just going through it, making a tier list for the top 12 guys, maybe 15 guys, however you want to do it, just to give yourself an idea if you want to trade in or not to the draft. So those are my tips this year to start the new fantasy season, and I'm looking forward to having people on the show. Hopefully we can have David on the show soon, and I'm looking forward to it. See you guys later. Like and subscribe if this content is for you. Is that what I'm supposed to say? I think it is, but yeah, looking forward to it, guys, and good luck this off season. Send me some trade offers.